After paying my parents' mortgage for years, they forced me to live in the basement for my pregnant sister. That's when I finally realized family doesn't always mean love, and I walked away for good. You'll be moving downstairs, my father said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Apparently, my old room was now Rachel's nursery. My sister was pregnant, so of course, I was being relocated to the damp basement. Even after I'd already paid $24,000 toward their mortgage. I didn't argue that night. I just said one thing quietly, no more. For years, I'd been covering the mortgage and all the household bills without complaint. 3 days after I stopped, the entire house felt the difference. The silence was heavy, the kind that creeps into corners when the refrigerator hum and Wi-Fi router buzz are all that keep order alive. That soft digital whir from my computer was the only sound that made sense. It was steady, rhythmic, the sound of logic, of lines of code behaving exactly as they should. This room, my childhood bedroom, had turned into my remote workspace, my world of control. At 22, I was already a senior software developer, the golden child, the success story my parents loved bragging about. But the moment I stepped outside that door, everything stopped making sense. Out there, I wasn't Daniel the developer. I was Daniel the ATM, Daniel the backup plan, Daniel the foundation prop for a crumbling house no one else was trying to fix. The door cracked open and the smell of roast and stress seeped in. My mom, Sharon, walked in carrying a slice of apple pie, her go-to peace offering when she wanted something. Her practiced smile was all sweetness and quiet manipulation. "You work so hard, honey," she cooed, placing the plate dangerously close to my stack of tech manuals. "I don't know how you can stare at that screen all day." "It's how the magic happens, Mom," I said, forcing a tired grin. I've been debugging a major issue for 6 hours straight, and my brain was mush. She brushed my hair back, a gesture from childhood that now made my skin crawl. "We're so proud of you, you know that?" she said softly. "Yeah, Mom," I muttered, but her hand didn't leave my shoulder. "Listen, sweetheart, I hate to bring this up, but the grocery prices have gone crazy lately. I'm about $200 short for the big shop this weekend." I didn't even look up. I just stared at the code on my screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. A few shopping bags in the corner caught my eye, new full ones. She'd just done a big shop 3 days ago. And Dad had been talking all week about some fancy new golf set. I knew where this was going. I didn't say a word. I just unlocked my phone and opened my banking app. "Sure," I murmured. "I'll send it." "Oh, you're a lifesaver," she sighed with instant relief, kissing my temple before collecting my coffee mug. "It's just what family does." That phrase hung in the air like incense. It's just what family does. It was their explanation for everything, for why half the mortgage was being pulled from my account every month even though my name wasn't on the deed. Why every utility bill, power, water, internet was in my name. Why I'd spent $8,000 last winter repairing the leaking roof while my dad complained that contractors were crooks. I paid, always, quietly. I co-signed for Mom's car too, and when she got behind on payments, I just took them over. Every time I told myself it was worth it, it kept the peace. My dad couldn't handle being seen as a failure. My mom needed to preserve her perfect middle-class image, so I became the financial glue holding their illusion together. The front door slammed. Heavy boots crossed the hall. Then my door flew open. Rachel stood there, 25, smug and glowing in that way only people who never face consequences can. Behind her was Robert, her husband, a quiet man with guilt in his eyes. "Still saving the world with your little computer wizardry," she teased. "Just paying the bills, Rachel," I muttered. "Tough day, huh?" She tossed her perfect hair. Robert nailed his interview today, total jerk of a manager, though. Didn't stand a chance. Robert just stared at the floor, embarrassed. Same story, different company. They'd been crashing at our house for 6 months since he lost his job, a temporary arrangement that had somehow turned permanent. My parents treated them like royalty. Rachel crossed her arms. "Hey, little brother, lend me $50, yeah, we're going out to celebrate." "Celebrate or cope?" I asked quietly. She rolled her eyes. "Don't be a jerk. I'll pay you back when Robert gets on his feet." That line had lost all meaning years ago, but I saw the panic behind her confidence, the fear of running out of excuses. So, like an idiot, I reached into my wallet and handed over 2 20s and a 10. Avoiding conflict was worth $50. That night, I called my best friend, Liam, the only person who knew everything. His face flickered on my screen, disbelief etched across it. "Dude, they're making you pay for their baby celebration." Daniel, you're not family, you're payroll. You're a one-man funding department for a failed corporation. It's not like that, I said, the words heavy. They just need help. They've needed help since your first paycheck, he snapped. Your dad gets golf clubs, your mom gets her car, your sister gets free rent, and you get the same room you had in high school. I didn't respond. I just stared at my reflection in the black screen, tired eyes, hollow cheeks. I didn't look like family, I looked like a sponsor. A week later, the family meeting happened. Over dinner, my dad cleared his throat, the classic prelude to bad news. With the baby coming, he said grandly, we'll all need to make some changes, big ones. Rachel smiled. Mom teared up. Robert fidgeted. Then Dad turned to me. So, he said, clapping my shoulder, you'll be moving to the basement. It's roomy, private, perfect for you, and it gives Rachel and Robert a proper bedroom to start their family. The basement? I asked, my voice tight. Dad, it's unfinished concrete. It floods. Don't exaggerate, he said, waving me off. We'll throw down a rug, hang some lights, cozy as can be. Mom jumped in, voice sugar-sweet. Think of it as your contribution to the baby, honey, a sacrifice. But a beautiful one, a sacrifice. That's what they were calling it, me giving up my only space, my sanity, for a nursery that wasn't mine. That night I went to look. The basement smelled like damp earth and rust. A single bulb buzzed overhead, casting twisted shadows. My dad's old weight bench sat in the corner beside my rusted childhood bike. The air was cold, heavy. A dark water stain spread across the far wall like a ghost map. A dead cricket lay curled beside the furnace. It wasn't a bedroom, it was a crypt. The next morning I tried to reason one last time. Mom, Dad, I can't work down there, I said, keeping my tone calm. My equipment can't handle moisture. I need wired internet, power stability. I literally can't do my job from the basement. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. You'll figure it out. You're smart. This isn't about intelligence, I said evenly. It's about infrastructure. Mom sighed dramatically. Daniel, stop making everything about you. Your sister needs this. Your sister needs this. The same words that had justified everything since childhood. She needed my bike. She needed my allowance. She needed my space. Now she needed my dignity. That night I overheard Rachel and Robert talking. I don't know, Robert murmured. It feels wrong. He works in there. Be real, Rachel said sharply. We're having a baby. What's he supposed to do? Kick out a newborn? He's single. He can handle it. I walked away before I heard more. I didn't need to. Their priorities were clear. I wasn't family. I was an obstacle. The next day, Aunt Carol called. She was my dad's sister, the family rebel who moved out years ago. I heard about the room, she said quietly. Your dad called to brag about how generous you're being. I exhaled. Yeah. Daniel, she said, her voice low and kind. You've always been the good one, but sometimes being too good makes people forget you're human. They start thinking your kindness is an obligation. Don't let them erase you. Her words hit harder than I expected. Don't let them erase you. That night I got an email about the annual family barbecue. My dad caught me by the stairs. Hey champ, can't wait for the reunion. I'll tell everyone how proud I am, you helping your sister and all. Real family spirit, I smiled faintly. Yeah, Dad, that'll be great. He walked away, satisfied, and that's when the switch flipped. If he wanted to make my humiliation public, then my response would be public too. I sat at my desk, the hum of my PC steady as a heartbeat. I opened my bank records, methodically collecting every transaction, mortgage transfers, bill payments, roof repairs, car installments. Screenshots, proof, evidence. Not for revenge, for reality. To remind myself I wasn't crazy. To prove I wasn't some selfish kid, I'd been their backbone, and I was done being invisible. He wanted a show of family unity at the reunion? Fine. I'd give him one, just not the version he expected. The day of the reunion dawned bright and unbearably cheerful. Our backyard, once my quiet retreat, had been transformed into the perfect picture of family celebration. The air was thick with the smell of grilled meat and freshly mown grass. Uncles I barely recognized laughed too loud around the barbecue, their beer bottles sweating in the sun. Aunts fawned over Rachel's small baby bump, offering endless advice about vitamins and nursery colors. Kids ran wild across the lawn, faces sticky with watermelon juice, their shrieks piercing the air. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting, wholesome, warm, and completely false. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, clutching a cold can of Coke, smiling just enough to seem polite. My father was in his glory, standing beside his brand-new grill, the same one I suspected had been funded by the money I'd sent my mom for property taxes. I sat beneath the big oak tree, watching him perform his usual act as the perfect family man. Rachel played her part flawlessly, glowing, proud hand resting over her stomach as she accepted congratulations. Robert stood nearby, looking like he wished he could disappear. My mother floated from group to group, refilling drinks and smiling as if everything was perfect. Then my father clanged a knife against his beer bottle. "Everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" The noise faded. Heads turned. This was his stage now. He pulled my mom close, puffing up like a politician at a podium. "As you all know," he began, "our daughter Rachel and her husband Robert have some amazing news they're expecting." Applause erupted. Cheers, laughter, clinking glasses. "And in moments like these," my father continued, "a family's strength really shows. We come together, we make sacrifices, we support one another." His eyes locked on me across the yard. "I've never been prouder of my son, Daniel. He's showing what true family means, giving up his own room to help his sister and Robert get a fresh start. He's moving down to the basement so they can settle in properly." He turned toward me, smiling that performative, self-satisfied smile. "That's the kind of man my son is. That's the kind of family we are. Let's hear it for Daniel." A smattering of applause followed. Rachel beamed. My mother wiped away a tear, and something inside me snapped. I stood up slowly, my heart strangely calm. "Actually, Dad," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "There's been a mistake." The applause stuttered and stopped. Every head turned. "I'm not giving up my room." The silence that followed was suffocating. The grill hissed quietly, the only sound in the world. My father's face stiffened. "What did you say?" His voice dropped low, dangerous. Rachel stepped forward, disbelief written all over her face. "Daniel, seriously, we already talked about this. It's just temporary." "My room," I said evenly, "is also my office. It's where I work, the job that pays for." I never finished. My father lunged toward me faster than I could react. His hand came down across my face with a crack that echoed across the yard. Pain flared, hot, sharp, and shocking. My vision blurred. I tasted blood. The crowd gasped. Someone dropped a plastic cup. I turned back toward him, one hand pressed against my cheek. My father's chest rose and fell in furious, ragged bursts. "You hit me," I said quietly, my voice trembling. Then louder, clearer, "You hit me." "Over a room?" No one moved. I took a breath that scraped my throat raw. "You want to talk about sacrifice? Fine, let's talk about what I've actually given up." I pulled my phone from my pocket, my hand shaking not from fear but fury. "For 2 years," I began, my voice cutting through the thick silence, "I've paid half this house's mortgage every single month." I swiped through screenshots, turning the screen toward them. "I pay for the power keeping that grill hot. The internet you all use, the water. When the roof collapsed last winter, I paid that $8,000 bill myself. And that car you love driving, Mom, that's in my name." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother froze, hand over her mouth. Rachel's face drained of color. "This isn't a gift you can give away," I said, lowering the phone. "That room, this house, they're not tokens in your game. You don't get to call me selfish because I won't keep paying to be erased." The words hung in the air like a spell breaking. My father's face, once flushed with pride, now looked almost hollow, drained. My mother began to sob. Rachel looked sick. Robert stood still as a statue, guilt spreading across his face like oil. Then Aunt Carol stepped out of the crowd. She walked right up beside me, her expression unreadable, and put a hand on my arm. "Let's go, Daniel," she said softly. I nodded, not looking back. As I walked past my family, their perfect image collapsing around them, I felt no victory, just emptiness. Mom called my name as I reached the gate, her voice cracking. I didn't stop. The gate clicked shut behind me with a sound that felt like the end of an era. That night, I checked into a cheap motel. The air conditioner rattled. The bed was hard, but it was quiet and mine. For the first time in years, I chose peace. I ignored the constant buzz of my phone, the calls, the texts, the apologies that came too late. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to dismantle everything they had built on my back. Not out of revenge, out of reason. I canceled the automatic mortgage payments. I logged into the utility accounts and set every service to disconnect for non-payment. I disabled auto pay on my mother's car loan. Each click felt like cutting another thread that had been wrapped too tightly around my life. When I was done, I blocked every number tied to that house. Then I closed the laptop and let silence fill the room. 3 days later, Liam drove me back so I could grab my things. The house was dark when we arrived. The air felt heavy, almost damp. No hum of the refrigerator, no light from the router, just cold, quiet stillness. Inside, my parents sat in the living room like ghosts, hollow-eyed and pale. My mother's cheeks were streaked with tears. My father looked smaller somehow, deflated. "Daniel," my mother breathed, standing quickly. "Thank God you're here. The power's out, the internet's gone, we got a notice about the mortgage." "I know," I said evenly. "I stopped paying for all of it." My father's voice came out rough and low. "You did this." He looked stunned, betrayed. "You'd leave your own family sitting in the dark." I met his eyes. "You hit me in front of everyone, Dad. We clearly have different definitions of family." That broke my mother. She crumpled, sobbing openly. "You don't understand," she cried. "We needed the money, we had to have it." "For what?" I asked. "More golf clubs?" "No," she whispered. "For the other mortgage, the credit cards, the debts. We're drowning, Daniel. Your payments were the only thing keeping us afloat." The words hit me harder than the slap had. They hadn't been using me for luxuries. They'd been surviving off me, keeping their secret shame hidden behind my steady income. Liam's hand rested on my shoulder, steady and silent. Then Rachel appeared in the hallway, her face pale, her eyes red. She looked smaller, fragile, stripped of the arrogance that had once defined her. "Daniel," she said softly. "I'm sorry." I said nothing. "When Dad hit you and you said all that stuff about the bills, I didn't know. I just thought everything was fine. I didn't realize how much you were doing. I thought Dad had it covered." Robert stepped forward too, his voice trembling. "I tried to tell her it wasn't right, but I didn't stop it. I should have." Rachel nodded, tears spilling freely. "I was jealous of you. You had your life together and I was scared. It was easier to believe I deserved help than to admit I was failing." For once, her honesty didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded real. My parents begged me to stay, to turn everything back on. My father even offered a deal. I could keep my room if I just resumed the payments. I walked to the coffee table, took out a business card, and placed it down. "This is a non-profit credit counseling service," I said quietly. "They'll help you consolidate your debts and make a real plan. That's your problem to fix now." Then I turned to Rachel and Robert. "You're about to be parents. That kid doesn't need perfect, it needs responsible. Stop waiting for me to clean up your lives. Grow up." And I left. The weeks after were strange but freeing. I rented a small one-bedroom downtown, big windows, city lights, quiet peace. It felt like breathing for the first time. Aunt Carol checked in often, updating me. My parents had finally seen a credit counselor. They were selling the house, downsizing into a small rental. The facade had crumbled completely. A month later, a message buzzed on my phone. "It's Rachel. I'm working part-time at a clinic now. Robert got a warehouse job. We're saving for a place before the baby comes. Thank you for waking me up." I stared at the message for a while before replying. "You're welcome. Good luck." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close. Sometimes I stand by my apartment window watching the city lights flicker. I think about them not with rage but with quiet acceptance. I didn't ruin my family. I simply stopped destroying myself to keep them comfortable. They had to learn to stand in their own light. It's incredible how quickly you rediscover your worth once you stop paying for people to forget it. Have you ever had to choose between family and your own self-respect? What would you have done? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a comment, hit subscribe, follow for more, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the next one.